special guest, my boy Santi, musician, compositioner. That's a word that they made especially for him, and a good friend of mine. So thanks a lot, Santi, for coming in. How you been, dog?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for getting that word right. Nobody gets it right, man.
Compositioner. I love that.
Yeah.
Compositioner.
If not composer, that's like what they used to call him. Now it's a compositioner.
Well, you reach certain levels. You're a writer, you're a composer, and this is a new level that they created for me specifically. So yeah, I mean, I forgive people when they don't get it right, but thanks, man.
No problem, bro. You know, we here at the Broskiedoodles, we take pride in actually, you know, getting the research right. I mean, and if there's one thing that the Broskiedoodles do, we get the facts correct. So, so we're glad to have you here, man. And I'm super excited. Myself being a musician, I know Steven, even though he himself does not play music, he has a great ear for music. And we actually haven't had an episode on music. And this is actually great because you're someone that not only makes music and been doing it for a long time, but you've also actually gotten into the music business already and have been able to make some money out of it. And you've toured recently with some of your band projects, so we're super excited to listen to that. Quick, I just want to get people knowing a little bit of your origin. What would you say was the story behind you getting into music and you know, playing instruments, and you know, when did it start for you?
Yeah, so first let me say I'm really happy to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me. I miss you, bro. If you guys, you know, for anybody cares, Kiko and I went to middle school and high school together. So this is kind of fun. I haven't seen you in, I don't know, maybe, 15, 20 years? I don't know.
Yeah,
I lose track of time. I'm really old. Anyway, but this is cool. The way I started with music is I was always a soccer kid. I grew up in Colombia, so I played soccer. I never imagined doing anything other than playing soccer until I was like 10 years old. And then my cousins started a band, and I don't know. And then I started I wanted to play drums. I just thought it was cool. Honestly, I thought it was cool. Like, I used to be in music lessons when I was a kid, and I never cared about any of that. So it was just playing soccer, dude. I played soccer like 3 times a day. And then eventually, because I don't know, music just it wasn't like a cool thing. It was just something my parents wanted me to do. So then eventually, when I was like 10 or 11, my cousin started a band, and I started playing drums, and I thought that was just really cool. And so in that band, I realized pretty quick that I started picking up the guitar, and I became better than the guitarist in the band within like weeks. And I was like, oh, maybe I should, you know, play guitar, I guess. And so I started learning different instruments and whatever. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, well, that's a pretty good start. I think I met you a little bit after that, when we were about 12 or 13 maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, sounds about right. And I remember we used to do the football. We used to play football. Santi was actually really good playing football. And then we started getting into music together, and a few of our friends. Santi really liked the electric guitar, and a lot of these punk bands, No Effects, I remember was one of those bands.
That's the name of the band, No Effects?
Yeah. No Effects, oh yeah.
Melancholy was one of
Melancholy, oh man, those were the days, bro. Melancholy, yeah, band, punk band from Sweden.
Yeah, so, and then I was
part of a Swedish punk band?
No, this is the music I was listening to. So I probably tried to pour it down Kiko's throat, because I was listening to so much of that stuff.
Sounds like my Good Charlotte days.
Yeah,
which was trash.
Good Charlotte, yeah, that's funny. That was like pop punk. That was like radio punk, and us real punks, we look down upon that.
Yeah, I know. I look down upon it myself.
Dude, man, but it was pretty cool days, because I remember Santi had started playing the guitar a little bit earlier than me, and I picked up my dad's acoustic flamenco guitar, and I would take it to his house, and his mom would go to work and be away, and then he was the only one there, and then we just go to his house and play music. And dude, it was like, for me, it was the formative years for like my own music endeavor. And I think for Santi, that was also, at the start, maybe, unless I'm mistaken, but the start of him like getting into composing. And actually, I remember him back in the day had this little program where you could actually compose things, but it was very archaic, not like the programs that you have now. And he would like manually put in the things. So I remember that very young, he was getting into the composition. And I also liked that too. I was like, since I knew how to play 2 chords, I was like, all right, I might use these 2 chords and make a song. And it was shit, right? But my purpose always was I wanted to create. So in that route, did you also see it that way, Santi? I mean, I know that you like playing covers too, but was it also something natural that you always wanted to create as soon as you knew how to play things?
Yeah, so I guess that's an interesting thing about different people and different how they develop differently as artists, because I had friends who were like classically trained, who were like maybe like little virtuosos or prodigies or whatever you want to call it, and they were amazing at reading music and playing and whatever, but they would not. They would just not sit down to write something. They would not sit down to compose. And I'd be like, hey, why don't you write a song? And they would be like, I don't know. Like, I just don't, that's not something I do, And for me, I was never formally trained or anything. I don't know if that has, maybe that kind of suppresses the creativity. I don't know. I'm not trying to deter anyone from trying to get formally trained. But for me, it was just really natural to just sit down with the same thing that you're saying. That I know 2 chords. Well, I'm going to write a song with those 2 chords. I know how to play 3 notes. I'm going to write a song with whether it's bad, whether it's good, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to create something. So for me, it just came very natural to just start composing, and I would just, just write. And like you said, I had this program called Tabit where I just input like note by note into the thing. And that's actually how I compose most of my music today. I type it into a grid instead of performing it, because I don't know if that's a whole different conversation, but it makes me understand everything I'm doing a lot better. But yeah, the creativity, it was natural to me to start writing. And I know it was for you too.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, back when I was selling audio gear, one of the companies I represented was Personas, and they came out with Studio One. And Studio One has 2 visions, and most of it just, a lot of people tend to use the grid more. I think the word is quantized or quantized, like where it's like on beat no matter what, or like you can actually play something into it and then it automatically like shifts the notes to be on time and things like that. So grid is awesome.
So the grid is there no matter what. It's just a matter of like, if I'm playing something on this keyboard right here, I don't know if you can see, if I'm playing something on there, I can see the notes coming in, and so you could do it 2 different ways, right? I'd be like, I want to write this chord, so I play the chord. Or instead, what you can do is you can just open up your grid and type in the notes manually. And I use both ways. I compose a lot of music, but I think I prefer to type in the notes, because like I know that I'm not, I know this might sound weird, it might be hard to understand, but like I know that I'm not playing any notes that I didn't mean to play. It's like when you've been playing your whole life, you might play a chord, you might not think about each note, but if I'm typing every single note, that I know that every note has a purpose, and the note length and the beats and everything. So it makes me just like really know my songs, like just completely inside out, note by note, beat by beat.
Okay, so that's interesting, because like in contrast, and I'm sure that you use different ways to compose, but the way that I compose is kind of like a mini improvisation session every few seconds, right? So I grab my guitar
until something sounds good.
Yeah, and I start playing a few things, and then once like the flow goes in it, I got it. Now, in your case, do you see in your head already the chords that are gonna sound good, and then you just type them in, and you don't go through the thing of having to play them and missing a note or whatever? You just see it in your head how it's supposed to sound already, and you put it there?
So I think it's a combination of what I call vision and what you're talking about, trial and error, right? So like sometimes I'll have an idea completely laid out in my head before I touch an instrument, and I'll be like, all right, cool, like I'm confident in this, and I know all I have to do is program it. What I mean by program it is opening the grid and typing in the notes, choosing a tempo, choosing a sound, and I use Logic, but in whatever DAW you use, or sitting down and playing it on guitar or on piano. And so then sometimes like you're like, oh wow, that idea worked exactly like I meant it. And it works perfectly, and it's great. And then sometimes you're like, wow, that idea was way off. I'm terrible. I suck. And then you gotta, trial and error for a while until something sounds good. But it's usually it's like a spectrum, right? It's like usually it's a combination of both. It's like I have this vision, and then most of the time, the finished product is something similar to the vision, but something that evolved from, oh, this sounds better, this sounds good. Or sometimes I'll get a really cool sound on Logic that I wasn't expecting, or I did something by accident, and I'll be like, oh, that actually works, and that'll drive the song into creation.
Okay, so it actually sometimes, I find it that when you have the notes and stuff, that gives you a vision, and then once you start going through sound banks, maybe a certain sound might get those notes and make you maybe it's the same vision, but maybe from another angle you're like, oh fuck, this could now ride a different way. So
yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting with sound banks and shit, because I don't spend a lot of money on sound banks and sample projects or sample plugins or whatever. Just because I do most of my music is piano or guitar based, or just simple electronic things. I guess I don't know if that's true, but anyway, I think what's interesting about that is that when you're going through sounds, you might hit a sound randomly that becomes the heart of the song, and it becomes what the song is. So if you were in a different mood and you hit a different sound or whatever, you might end up with a completely different song, just based on your software, which is kind of weird. It's kind of weird to think about, oh, this song became this just because of what I clicked at that time. You know what I mean? It's different than when you for you, maybe you write on your acoustic, that's what's coming or whatever,
Do you, when you, I guess this might be a question from an outsider point of view, but when you're composing your music, or you're with somebody or a group of people, how does that translate when you're working with other artists? Do you think, I guess I'm trying to categorize it, but do you find yourself to be more of the lead, where you kind of delegate different sounds to people if you're doing it I'm talking more about your touring days and instead of you on a thing, but do you find yourself being the lead and delegating more, or do you ever find to make a song with someone and then there's a clash due to software, due to your different ways of looking at things or composing things? How does that, what has been your experience in that?
Okay, so I think that for a lot of bands and a lot of people, you get in for rock bands in general, you might assume that I get into a band with 5 dudes with our instruments cranked, all to 11, whatever, and we write a song like that. And that certainly happens, and I've certainly done that, but I haven't done that in, I don't know, over 10, 12 years. I don't write music with people around me. I don't write music with live instruments. That's not how it works for me. A lot of people do write like that, but if I'm writing music, I'm sitting at this desk with this keyboard next to me, with those guitars next to me, and just most of the time I'm just in my Logic program and just typing notes. That's how I write music. Even when I write for my bands, even when I write for my projects with other people, So instead, like how I collaborate, and I just write an idea and I send it to the guy I work with, my friend Corey, and I'll send it to him. And then it's like right now, yesterday I wrote a piano track and vocal melodies. Vocal melodies just means my melody ideas with random lyrics. So I send it to him, and then he goes, all right, I like that. Here's what I came up with. And then we'll piece together some melodies. He'll write some lyrics. I'll work on the instrumental. And then boom, we have a song. We can write a song in a week like that. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question completely. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to get a sense, especially for people who are listening, like just how because I look at making music differently than you guys do, because I don't write it. So actually the thought of making music is pretty overwhelming to me, right? When you have so many moving pieces, you have the bass lines, the harmonics, the leads, and the different instruments that go along with it. It feels like, well, I'm not really good at all of it in general, right? But sometimes I get a little diddle in my head, and I'm like, oh shoot, like that's actually kind of dope. And so my thing is, I collaborate with Kiko in this podcast, and I collaborate with other people in my life. But when it comes to music seems to be something very personal. I mean, like when I talk to Kiko, there are some things that like don't change. Like even though I'm like, hey, can you do this? And he's like, no, but this is what I really wanted to do, and that's fine because it's your song. But when you put that into perspective with other people, I just want to know kind of like what is the etiquette from artist to artist when you're blending stuff together. What does that look like? How does that feel? And if somebody's out there thinking about making music, like what would you tell them? I guess in that sense, kind of like how we brought you onto the podcast, and you're like, oh well, like what are we going to talk about? Well, it'll find its way, right? Do you think that same thing would happen in music?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question, but if you're asking me about like how it goes writing with other people, or how to get started on it.
Yep.
Well, what I would say to someone that wants to write music or wants to get into music in general is just because it's overwhelming, and like you're saying, like there's so many instruments. There's literally infinite stuff that you could do. So what I would say is just take it one step at a time and just have fun. If you're not having fun doing music, if you're not having fun doing art, then do something else. Because
do math or something, right?
Do whatever. Yeah, do whatever makes you happy. I mean, like, dude, I want to get to a point where I can sit down and write music as a job, but I don't sit down for hours to write a song because someone told me to, or because I'm supposed to. I do it because I enjoy it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think Kiko probably knows about this too. It's like you don't play music because first of all, music, you don't make money anymore. It's tight. But even if you did, like you don't do it for that. You don't do it for money, whatever. So I don't know if I'm getting off on a tangent, but just enjoy it. And like if you have an empty project and you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna write this melody, and you just pull up a piano, you put the melody, you're like, all right, great, I have a piano. Don't think about, oh, I have 12 more instruments to add to this. Just think about, I have a piano, let's add a beat to it. So I'm gonna pick a kick drum sound, I'll pick a snare sound, and a hi-hat sound. I'll write a simple beat, boom, now I have a little piano line and a simple beat, whatever, and then I'll just add it one by one, and you enjoy. It's like putting a puzzle together, but instead of like, it's like putting a puzzle together, but you get to make it as you go. Like it's your picture, right? Not something else. Someone else. I don't know. It's kind of a really like, it's a unique experience. Like listening back to something you created. It's a high that I chase.
That sounds awesome. No, yeah, thanks. No, you hit it right on the nail, right there.
Cool. Really quick, it's my light flickering, right? Do I have?
Yeah, I think I've noticed some shit like that. You have ghosts in your crib?
Yeah, your energy field's like off the charts, man.
Is that part of being a compositioner?
A composionaire. That's another word.
That's a new word.
Yeah, composionaire.
No, I'm not there yet, Kiko. I'm not there.
Oh, my bad. That's why. But I think you're getting there because that should be blinking like you're about to evolve to the next level.
Yeah, no, got a Super Saiyan on us right now.
At the risk of sounding really lame, I've been watching Vampire Diaries.
Risk it all, baby.
It's one of those like witch things. I don't know. Yeah, Vampire Diaries. You should watch it. It's the worst show ever, but it's amazing.
Hey man, if they sponsor this podcast, for sure, get everybody watching this shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any lights. I don't even have lights on. It's so weird.
Fuck it, Santi. One thing, carrying on the topic that Steve was asking you, because I think I find this is interesting, and I always noticed this from Santi back in the day. When I started writing, right, and composing, even if I didn't know shit and I sucked, I was just like, I have this idea I want to make, and I just want to make it my own, right, and do it myself. And Santi, I guess it was maybe the smartest way to do it. He always wanted to have the ensemble of people, right, and I just always found it hard to work with other people, but you always went that route. So following the question from Steven, how do you see the contrast of when you have ideas that you want to put out, but you're doing them with somebody else, and the clash comes between the creative minds, right? Because I find it that I'm very close to the ideas that I want, and it's very hard for me to collaborate.
To compromise.
And yeah.
to compromise.
But I know that you always have projects with other people, but I also know that you have a strong composition drive. So how do you balance that, and how do you think those relationships work in your experience, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, well, first of all, let me say that I feel like I write music on my own 100%. And the reason I say that is because at a certain point around 2009, I believe, when I left this pop band, I decided that I wasn't going to write with people anymore. Not because I'm hard to work with or because I don't want to work with anyone, but I just had so many ideas and I just wanted to do things my way, So I started writing music completely by myself, and it was liberating. But eventually, I met my friend Corey, who I have on most of my projects, and sometimes you just click with someone, you know what I mean? So I don't feel like anyway, my answer first is that I write music completely by myself and exclusively with Corey, with one person. I don't write music with anyone else. I just recently started putting together some ideas for a different band, for my touring band actually. But other than that, I don't have to deal with that compromising thing a lot because Corey and I click really well, and we know how to. I don't know. I guess I don't feel like I compromise on the music I'm writing now, but it is tough, man. Like I remember being like, this is what I want in the song, or I would write like I write. For my main band Europa, I write all the instruments, including drums and bass and everything. So then when the guys would like disagree with something and not want to play it exactly, I would just feel like, man, like I really have a specific vision for this, and not seeing it realized, it's kind of weird, and it's hard to accept. Like you were saying, it's hard to accept when you know something is right or you feel it, because music's subjective anyway, so nobody's right or wrong, but when you feel something is right and the person in charge of the instrument doesn't want to do it, it's tough. It can be heartbreaking too, but just in general, I don't deal with that a lot. You do have to compromise, like when you write music normally, but you just, I don't know, you learn to move on. I guess you learn to compromise and move on.
Now, do you think, because this is what I've noticed when I look at bands, do you think that successful bands are a mixture of different energies within the people in there, where you might have one or two strong creative minds and others that just like to vibe and go with the flow, and when it's not like that, I mean, even having two strong creative minds can be a problem, but when you have even more than that, it feels like what the fuck, man.
Yeah. too. I think I understand the question. I know where that was going. Kiko, are you back?
Yeah, this was weird. But this was a bit weird. Let me record again. Okay, so what I was getting to is that, like, I know that bands have issues and sometimes break because there's creative minds, within that, one wants to do something, the other wants to do the other. Do you think that when you see bands that make it big, a lot of times it's because out of the 5 people, at least 3 of them are just cool following the flow, and they're good musicians, good executors, but they have the lower energy? And that doesn't mean that you're less for the band or anything, but there's just an energy topic there where if everyone, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if everyone wants to fucking do their composition like they want it, then they cannot be a band, right? So do you think it works like that?
So first of all, from my experience and from what I know, from what I've seen, not just from my own experience. Anyway, there isn't one formula. There isn't one way that something works. I'll tell you. Look, my 2 favorite bands. My main favorite band is a rock band called Thrice, and as far as I can tell, they write everything completely like as a team. They have equal say on everything. Right? It's like the 4 minds come together to create this stuff. And that's crazy, right? That seems like pretty wild. And then my second favorite band is a band called The Deer Hunter, where one guy is in charge of 7 other guys and writes every single part of every single instrument of every single, word and all that. So it works both ways, and it's just like whatever works for you, man. There's no formula. Nothing's gonna... forcing a certain way or another is not going to help you. It is tough when you're in a band and someone takes charge and you kind of have to take that back seat, you know what I mean? And a lot of my guys have had to go from we started the band, we were writing music together, to eventually accepting it's best for the band if I focus on just being the best bass player, being the best guitar player that I can for this band, instead of trying to write music. So I don't know, dude, music and art in general is very emotional, so you can have some really hard times accepting that hey, I'm not, my composing or my creativity is not good enough for this band, it can be tough. It's just if you wanted to play guitar, but you're not good enough at guitar, so you have to play bass or something. I'm not saying the bass is inferior, but sometimes you got to accept things like that. Yeah. And I don't know.
This is a question for both of you, actually, and I know we were touching on the topic a little bit before the episode started, and I wanted to kind of bring it back because I find this to be pretty interesting on how musicians view music, and then how mainstream people view music, right? So you mentioned that and it's a pretty well-known fact, especially with now all the streaming services and Spotify and Apple Music, that musicians don't make money off of making music. They make money predominantly off of merch and touring, is what I understand. And so for the smaller bands that are starting out or they're lesser known, and they're just trying to get their name out there. I mean, yeah, you can go on SoundCloud and you can do certain things to try to bring awareness to your music, but in the meantime, making money and making this and keeping your chops up, I guess is what I would call it, you'd have to go and perform at be a resident at a local bar or whatever, right? But you mentioned something pretty interesting, that you can't even really count on playing your music as much as you'd like, and I wanted to maybe touch on that a little bit more. What ends up happening in the bar scene? Maybe you can just express that.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say my experience is probably going to, differ from everyone else. But from what I think Is he Steve? Is he gone?
Yeah, I think he. Yeah, I think he's gone.
Hey,
I don't know
what's
if,
up?
I don't know
I
if it
think
has
he's
to
back.
do with the recording shit, or I don't know if it's the connection or if it's this fucking service that we're using, because it used to work perfect, but
Maybe it's
fuck.
me. I was too prepared. Steve, you back?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what happened, but I may have got my question out. Did I get my question?
No, yeah, you did.
No, I heard you. So first of all, my experience is probably it's going to differ from everyone else's, and it's really funny because we used to have, as musicians, we used to have CD sales, right? And then that, and then Napster took that away or whatever. Then we had downloads like 99 cents per song, and then Spotify took that away. Then we always had touring, and Corona took that away. So at this point, we're all just like, I don't know. There's nothing for us. And even in the sync world of TV and whatever, they're trying to pay musicians less and less. But anyway, about original music, yeah. So like, a good way to make money as an artist is to go out to a bar and play music, right? So they'll hire you to play 4 hours or whatever. Like, I play with my friend Corey, and he plays acoustic, I play electric, and we just play for 4 hours at a time. But you are playing covers. You are not playing your original music, and most artists don't have 4 hours of original music anyway. But you're not there for your fans. You're there to make a paycheck, and you're there for the patrons of the bar or the restaurant. So you're playing covers. I mean, you can sprinkle your originals here and there, and we used to do that. But for the most part, people would just sit there like, I don't know. You want to keep the people engaged. You want to keep them singing along. You want to keep them entertained, and then. So you end up like Corey and I set up, and we play 100 covers, and we just let people pick from those, and so it's fun. It's fun because we play songs we like. But we kind of gave up on the whole playing originals at bars and restaurants, because people don't want to hear that. But something that you can do is you set up your CDs for sale. You set up your original music, so when people say, "Oh, I like your style," whatever, you can tell them, "Hey, for $10, take the CD, whatever." So that's the way you can get your music out.
Okay. Now, do you find that when you're making music and trying to make it in that scene, do you find it that having the bar covers gig to sort of pay the bills, while in the background you're working on pushing your own original stuff? Do you think that's a better choice than having like a regular job instead? Like, do you think that adds to it if you're doing, because you're still, like, I guess, playing music?
Yeah. So some artists, like if you go to a local bar or whatever, you'll see an artist who plays like funky shit, right? And he plays funky covers and whatever, and so they can easily, if your music matches the covers that you're playing, like the style, you can easily promote your music better. For Corey and I, we've been in bands of like experimental music, electronic, and heavy rock, where playing acoustic guitar covers didn't really make sense to promote our own music. So we have a specific artist name that's different for our cover shit. You know what I mean?
Right, but what I'm trying to say is that, do you think, I guess I had an experience where I was playing some covers in Venezuela when I was there, and I didn't particularly like it, especially because the type of people that I met in that scene were people that did that. Like, they played covers. They weren't in the background also doing the original stuff, right? And they have a different mindset of all it. Like, they just do it like, it's like we're laying bricks, do this, get the fuck out. And it made me sort of resent the music.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So what I'm asking is, do you think, and I guess this is personal and it varies for each person. But I wanted to get your opinion on this. Do you think, even if it's the music that you're covering has nothing to do with your music and you cannot promote your music through it, but do you think that the fact that you're at least playing guitar and I guess practicing your instrument is more worth it than maybe you know having an office job or a server job? Like, do you prefer that? Do you think it's better to do that, or do you think that it turns off that little light of that music has, the beautiful side of it?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I understand the question. I think. So I've met guys who are jaded and are burnt out, you know what I mean? And they're like, man, I don't want to play another cover again. I don't want to play another gig in front of, you know, fucking whatever, 15 people that don't care. And they're straight up don't want to do it, and they'll go get another job. For me, I've made money with music at different levels over the years, but I've never completely relied on it for like a whole year or something. So for me, I've had a serving job that I've kept as a backup always. You know what I mean? But I don't like serving. So for me, any day that I like earn money playing music or doing anything other than serving at a restaurant, I count it as a win in my life. You know what I mean? For me, if I'm out playing covers at a shitty bar and I only made $100, I still count that as a win rather than go to a restaurant and making $200. But that's just me, you know what I mean? Like, some people might prefer, I don't know, some people, and also if there's any risk that I would lose my love for music, or any risk, I've never gotten to that point, but if there was, then I would understand. I would like immediately go get another job, because if I don't have music, I mean, I have nothing in my life, honestly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds too dramatic, but like, if I don't have music, I don't know what else I could do, you know? Yeah. So if I lose the love for music, I don't know. So I wouldn't want to do anything that risks that. For sure.
Hey, that's interesting. Speaking of going on tour, just because I know that you're in the Florida area like myself, what is your track? What's your route? Do you ever end up going out of state? Are you lucky enough to have one of those opportunities to go around the country almost? So
last year we did. This band hit me up to fill in for one other guitarist, and I became really close with them, and I became their touring guitarist. So we did, starting in Louisiana, down to Fort Lauderdale, up to New York, all the way up over to the West Coast. Did down to California and came back down through Arizona and Texas. So we did a full U.S. tour in 35 days. We played 29 shows in 35 days. That was some of the best time of my life. It's a lot of fun, and I mean, you know what I mean? Think about it, 29 shows in 35 days.
That's insane.
To travel the U.S. in a month, in a little over a month, dude, that's amazing. I mean, that must have been very taxing, but you got to
dude, you're exhausted, but I don't know, the feeling of, like I said, like any day I spent, like if any day I spent playing at a bar, it's a win for me. Then during this tour I was playing anywhere from 400 to 1,000 capacity venues all over the country. So I had we were the opening band, so it's not like they're cheering. It's not like they're dying to see us. But I have a crowd of 500 to 1,000 people every night. I don't know. It was very fulfilling. Then we did so it was really cool. After that, in October, we did Europe, and we did another 30 days. I think it was 17 shows in 30 days. A lot more traveling, but that was Germany, over to Netherlands, over into England, then back over to France, Austria, Switzerland, more Germany, Spain and Italy too. I played.
What's
in
your
Barcelona.
experience? Is there do you see a difference between the crowds in America and in Europe, or when you're up there, you don't really notice that?
Well, the difference. So, in all these tours that I've been a part of, I haven't been in the headlining band, which means the crowd is going to depend on that headlining band. You know what I mean? So if we might play for like, we open for this band that's instrumental metal, but like almost with that like a hip hop influence kind of thing. So it's like a younger crowd. And then in Europe, we opened for a band who was also instrumental, but it was more progressive and more experimental. So the crowd will depend by the band more than anything. But I do think, I mean, everything in Europe was different, man. It was honestly really awesome. Like my time in the United States was incredible, but going to Europe was eye-opening. I think just because I think people respect the arts more over there. You get treated better by whoever's,
The venues and stuff.
The venues, the budget, the cities have budgets for the arts and whatever. You get put in hotel rooms instead of just, or you get food instead of just getting money. You know what I mean? The difference between them, which you might prefer to be paid $15 and go buy something, but the fact that some venues will they have a kitchen and have a person that comes in and cooks for the entire tour with 20 or 25 people and just like takes care of you. You know what I mean? It was more like I don't know. You just feel more taken care of in Europe.
Damn, that's interesting. Yeah. And you, I mean, one thing that I find crazy, especially on the tour in the U.S., that obviously because of the logistics, you were able to play more shows, but still 29 shows in 35 days. I mean, it's insane, do you think like you need to train for that type of thing, like as if you were an athlete that was going to do some sort of marathon?
So I've been on tours before, but I think the longest tour I did was like 12 shows or something before then. And then when this tour started, we started, like I said, in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and then we did seven days in a row. Up until like Charlotte, North Carolina or something. So it was just straight into like the deep end, you know what I mean? 7 days in a row, no rest. And it was honestly like by that 7th day, I was like, dude, this is incredible. Like I don't need a day off. I'm ready. I can just keep going. I don't care. When everyone else is like, oh, thank God we have a day off tomorrow. I'm like, dude, what am I gonna do? I'm bored. Like I want to play a show.
Okay, so it was just like it actually carried you and got you in a flow where you're like, you think that the touring life is something that would come, like you'll be able to do it and tolerate it?
Yeah, honestly, it's tough, man. It is. It's tough because when you're on tour, you're trying to save as much money as possible. So you're sleeping at friends' houses or you're sharing one hotel room between 5 dudes. You're trying to eat. You're trying to save your per diem, save your money. So it is rough sometimes. Like you might like there's an emotional thing that happens too, where like you can be. This is gonna sound pretty dramatic. I'm a pretty dramatic guy, but you might have you might get to a point where you feel alone, and at the same time you never get a moment to yourself. But if that makes sense, I don't know if that makes sense. You're like, oh man, like I haven't been alone in like 3 weeks, but I also feel like and all my guys, I love them. All they're amazing, super good friends. Really nice group of people to be around for that long of a period of time. But as a human, like it becomes like I'm in this van for weeks and weeks, and I'm just like, damn. And I don't even have a time to myself. But anyway, I got addicted to that life. It was so good, and it was mostly like the performing part of it. it was mostly like getting on stage for even half an hour, 45 minutes in front of, I don't know, in Europe, we might have played shows to like 50 people, or, you know, up to 1,000 people. Like, just, there's something that you as an artist, like, or as a performer, you chase forever, that feeling, you know what I mean?
Is it different when you're playing? Because I mean, you as a composer, you told me, like, you know, there's like this magic moment and like this high, right, when you get something working and it works, boom. And then here, even though it's sort of related to music, it's a rather different situation where you're playing other people's composition, but you're executing it for all this crowd and there's this energy, and it's also a high to it. Do you see it as different things, like just different in highs? You know, how do you relate those?
Yeah, I think, well, to put it into context, so this might be an important piece of information to answer that question. I was a huge fan of this band that called me to fill in for them. So imagine an artist that you love calling you up and being like, hey, can you fill in on guitar on this tour to open for this other huge band that you already like too. So there's definitely a different thing between playing music that you wrote in front of people and playing music that you didn't write in front of people. But if it's music you love, and if it's music that you're playing every day for 30 days in a row, you eventually start feeling a sense of ownership of that music, you know what I mean? And then you become like I know I didn't write these parts, but they become like mine in that moment. So I don't know, it starts to blend together, like the feeling of playing a song that I wrote in front of 50 people in Orlando, and playing a song that I didn't write but I've been playing for 6 months or whatever in front of 1,000 strangers in London or something. I don't know.
That's dope. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a really fun time. Actually, my last tour was this year after coronavirus had already started, so I was actually worried they were going to cancel it. We got home, I think, February 16th, so it was just in time for quarantine. Yeah,
and if we knew what we know now, you probably could have toured another 2 months or so and been fine. Yeah. But no, this has been amazing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I find one of the things that Kiko and I were talking about the other day is that, like, I feel like I have been able to meet, and I know it's a popular thing to do music or to want to play music, but I feel like everywhere I go, I always find such talent in music. And I wish that more of that talent was like they're found out. You know what I mean? Because like you look at some of these mainstream pop music, and I feel like, man, like, okay, yeah, it's good, but like, dude, like, my boy rips it apart, like in the rap, or Kigo like can throw down guitar like nobody I know, you know what I mean? And and it's so cool, and I'm like, dang, like, I know so many people who deserve the same spotlight, and it doesn't. And I feel like, just, I don't know, I mean, it's natural, it's the competition, it's the overwhelming amount of information and streams that you can stream. I mean, like, you know what I mean, like, you'll never run out of something to listen to if you really want to be a music absorber. But for the music maker, it's a little bit tough to put yourself there, and we see that in not only in music and other stuff as well. So I've just been blessed myself to be able to just be around people with such talent, and it's been really, really cool for me.
Well, I think with you, Steven, and I think we talked about this before, you have a really good ear for music, which, I don't know, I've always said, like, I guess because I find to think that there's so many people that don't understand and appreciate music, that I think, like, there's two types of musician. Like, there's the people that create music and obviously have a good ear for music, but then also people that can recognize good music and appreciate that realm, even if they don't create it themselves. Because there's people that I've met in my life, one of them being Steven, but very few where even like my dad is this type of person too, and he influenced me when I was growing up by the type of music that he heard, right? He was, I guess, a curator of music, and that allowed me to have a certain feeling towards music, and a lot of the things he heard was composition.
That might be Santi. Are you got
That's
rain
me.
by you?
I'm getting rain on you. I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's kind of peaceful.
okay.
It's kind of peaceful.
No,
I'm
it's
okay with
peaceful. I just wanted to make sure that it's not a fire here, because on one of our episodes there was some smoke coming out, and Steven's like, "Yo, is that cool?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think it's cool." And then there was a fire in my bathroom because my girlfriend left like a candle, and it fucking lit up, dude. So I was just making sure there wasn't like this flames in the back.
The crackling sound of of your building coming apart. So peaceful. So peaceful.
Oh, something smells
Fucking,
toasty.
Firefighters just knocking down my door. This happened, bro. No, but so like, you know, like these people that understand music, right? And I'm sure like in your case, Santi, at least I see it this way. I don't my purpose or my vision is I don't really care about making music that is liked or by millions or, you know, billions of people. I prefer to have a more select quality of listeners, and obviously enough of them so that it could make a career out of it. But I've you know, you've always liked indie bands, and when I listen to some people play in Madrid, sometimes I go to see certain people that I like, and it's like a little auditorium with 300, 400 people. That feeling is even though an arena is cool too, there's a certain thing to that feeling of playing to a crowd that's so into that, I guess, in comparison to like Daddy Yankee playing a stadium with 500,000 people. Like, I think that there's like a sense of quality over quantity. And is that how you see it too? Do you like the more private or intimate sound, or do you think that an arena you'll be able to like enjoy that and like that as well? Obviously that would mean more money, but in the performing of it.
Yeah, so I want to hit a couple points about what Steve was saying. Yeah, there's a difference between what you hear on the radio and like a friend who is making music or whatever, and I think a lot of it is hard. Like, you can see a product that you can tell when a product was made for profit, you know what I mean, for money. You can kind of feel that, whereas when you see your friend play something from his heart, it's like there's a different thing there. And then about what you were saying, Kiko, is I grew up listening to local bands and smaller touring bands, right? Like, my favorite bands, I would go to a show and it would be, I don't know, 300 people tops in a small room, and I would like get so close to the singer I could, like, you know, these crazy heavy rock shows where I could like even, you know, touch them, and they give you the microphone. So when I was a teenager, I grew up like going to shows like that, you know what I mean, where like the feeling is just like it's so intimate, and there's just like nothing else. So then, like, going back to seeing like big artists, like I do like big artists. So like I remember going to see Mana. You remember Mana? Yeah. I remember going to see them and at the Amway Theater over here, and it's like I'm sitting in a basketball stadium, and it's like the show is amazing, don't get me wrong, but it's like watching a DVD, you know what I mean? It's like you sit at a chair and it's like, oh, and you're watching a production, which is cool, whatever, but it's for someone like me who's been spoiled into like
the really intimate stuff,
into intimate, yeah, it's a different experience, and like it's something indescribable. It's something that you can't like fake, you know what I mean?
I had an experience recently. I went and watched one of my favorite bands, is Mumford & Sons. Mm-hmm. And I went to watch them in Barcelona last year, and it was like at a stadium. And to be honest, this was the best band that I've seen live. I haven't really gone to hundreds of concerts, but this is the best band that I've seen live, and it was amazing. But yeah, it was literally like just watching a really good DVD with great, amazing sound, even though I knew it was live. Yeah. And it was, in a way, I was like, man, I wish these guys weren't that big so that I could see them like at a small theater. on like a more acoustic setting type shit. And there's artists that just because of how big they got, there's no way of seeing them other than in an arena. And I think maybe like I like hip hop, so going to watch like a hip hop concert on an arena, like that's probably fire as fuck, right? Because but I think like bands like Mumford and Sons or like a lot of the people that I like, which is more I guess more instrumental stuff,
like organic instruments. Yeah.
There's a thing of watching that close up, you know, like even not acoustic, but still like, you know, I remember watching the Mars Volta live, and it was a small theater, like less than 1,000 people, and that closeness where you're actually seeing everyone play the things is fucking amazing. Because when you're in an arena, you don't see them playing, and I guess it's different when you go as a musician than if you go just as a fan, because I think the vision that you have is different. But when I'm in a concert, I like to analyze the whole thing as a musician, and not being able to see them play is like, fuck, that's a bit fucked. But thankfully, I like a lot of small artists too, and I get to see those close-up concerts, which I think I enjoy more.
Yeah, man, it's like these arena shows, like you see the drummer hit the snare, and you're so far that you hear it later, right? The speed of sound literally, like, it takes a while to get to you. So I think that's really interesting. I remember going to see Blink-182 last year or 2 years ago or whatever, and you're just watching a screen, bro. You're just watching a big fucking screen. It's an amphitheater. It's a huge place, and you're just watching a screen. And I don't know. And the energy is all right, whatever. But I don't know. I just times I felt like I could just be watching this at home on headphones. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's an unpopular opinion, but it is true. With these arena gigs, you're a little bit out of touch, you know. And like, for example, changing the topic a bit, I really like stand-up comedy, and I think that with stand-up comedy, it sort of has the same effect. Where like, I mean, even more, because with stand-up comedy, you need the reaction of the people. With music, it's like you're playing and you sort of focused in. But when it's that big, you're sort of out of touch with the people. Yeah, I guess when you're watching like Metallica play for like 1 million people, and I guess that's like an experience. But I mean, like this happened to me. I went to see a football game here, right, when I moved to Spain, like a Clásico game, right? Barcelona, Real Madrid. And yeah, it's fun, right? It's cool. Like, but I was like, all right, I don't need to do this again. Like I could watch this shit at home, drinking a few beers, and I'm gonna see every play perfectly with a replay, with, you know. And
yeah, you're gonna see it better. Yeah, the actual sport, you're gonna actually see it better. But I guess there's nothing. I haven't been to a game. Obviously I haven't been to a Clásico. I would love to, but I bet the energy is just something different, though, right?
Yeah, it is. But I guess the type of person that I am, I like to be comfortable, but I guess, you know, like football fans will actually want that shit.
But you went to see your team play away, right? You're in Madrid watching.
No, I actually went to Barcelona.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Even more to your favor, like, yeah, motherfucker, you should enjoy this shit. You with the people, like.
Yeah.
But I just, you know what it was? I think I've been spoiled in the U.S. with the sports logistics of the U.S. Like when you go to see a baseball game, it's like a comfortable venue, and you could even say it's not all about the sports, but about like the experience of being in the stadium, getting a hot dog, getting a beer. And I guess if you talk to like a football purist, he'll be like, bro, we're here to watch the game. Like in Europe, there's not like this concession stands or nothing. People bring their own sandwich, and on the half game they eat it, you know. So it's very, I guess, rustic. It's very, I don't know, it's different, right? Like they go there to watch the fucking game, and they're smoking cigarettes watching the game. And I understand that is like the purest way of doing it. But I guess I was just spoiled into watching a game and also being comfortable there. But I guess that's just a personal thing. So that's why, like, if I have a big screen and I'm watching that shit, I prefer that a lot more. Seeing every game on every angle.
Yeah. No, I mean, For me, I have my fiance. She has a friend who has toured with J Balvin and a lot of the other Latin artists here. And when you start to get into these big arenas, like for me, I'm backstage. I'm like, he passes right in front of me. I'm helping. I'm just like like locally when he's in town, like she'll give me a call or she'll give Nat a call and she'll have us run the meet and greet or whatever, right? So we actually get to experience, by proxy, kind of like, oh yeah, like he's right here, and there's a whole nother vibe to it, like being backstage. And I appreciate the artists that come out, like they go from main stage and then they like find like a little platform in the middle of the crowd in the arena, and then like they try, right? Because they know that they're so big, they have like these massive light shows and like these enormous blow up freaking God knows what, especially like on his Colores tour or Arcoiris tour. And it was like, I was like, dude, this is amazing, right? So I kind of parallel that to like the hip hop tours. But then I saw like St. Lucia in Fort Lauderdale at a little freaking thing, and Buddy came right by us, like he just walked through the crowd, like I mean, and it was just amazing too. That was like one of my favorite shows, and I paid $20 for that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So when you're paying, when you know, like I don't know. Personally, being spoiled like you guys, you know, you realize like, dang, like I don't feel like I want to pay $400 to sit here to still see him far away. Yeah. You know what I mean? Although from a music standpoint, I don't mind doing it if it meant for him or her to keep on making music, or them to keep making music too. So I get it from both points. There's just sometimes where I feel like there's a lot more hands in the pot, like trying to make more money out of it, and then it loses its touch.
Yeah, right. And like I said, I was spoiled going to shows when I was a kid, because I would pay $6 or $12. I would see my favorite artists play right in front of my fucking face. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but that brings up a conversation actually about like how artists get paid now, and how, like I was saying, a lot of our revenue avenues or whatever were taken away. Because like earlier you were talking about Spotify plays and whatever, and how it's difficult for artists to
very little money, right? It's like it's like fractions of a penny every play or something like that, right?
I think it's 0.4 pennies per play on Spotify, at least.
Yeah, and I was reading an article the other day too that if it doesn't reach a certain amount of time played, it doesn't count.
30 seconds, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, like
they're applying some shady shit with podcasts on that sense, but
but I think that brings up a conversation about like, should we start paying artists in a different way? Should we start thinking about this differently, and like in the digital age, like let everyone it's like the original copyright laws were meant to control copies, like literal copies, right? Mm-hmm. And now in the digital age, that doesn't really make sense, because people can make copies of anything, right, digitally. So if we changed our way that we think of how we pay artists, I don't know. That goes into what you guys were talking about, universal basic income at some point. Mm-hmm. And that would include like taking care of people who do art, whose art is just basically free now, and the community could take care of them or whatever. But anyway,
that's an interesting topic. I think for that, let's leave that for the next episode, because we're gonna get a bit more on technical things. But to give a bit of conclusion on this and stay on the topic, Santi, do you think that back in the day, right, 40 years ago, you would make a record, it would come out on a vinyl, it was a single, one song on a vinyl, people had to pay whatever, 10, 20, $30 to buy the vinyl to hear that song, right? artists didn't even have to tour, and they would become millionaires out of one song that people. Okay, so then Napster came along, and it's like, well, now you cannot just depend on selling the record because people can copy it digitally, and now with Spotify even more. That made it so that you had to tour more, and I guess do a little more work. Me myself as a musician, even though I value creating music and the effort and talent that it takes to compose, I also think that I don't mind, like, an artist, being that this is something that I love to do, like, also having to go out there and work it, you know, and like play for people to make my money. Do you think of it that way, or do you think that we do need a way to shift the way that we pay artists to make it so that it's more fair? Like, do you think it's becoming too much on the side of, like, if you don't play a concert, then you don't make money, and that shouldn't be the case? Should be more fair?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're assuming that everyone can play shows, you know, and I don't think that's really the case. I mean, some artists, like, maybe you don't tour for because you have a condition, or maybe you don't tour because your music, it doesn't, like, some people write really, you know, maybe like orchestral shit, or some like really creative experimental, like 8-bit or computer shit that doesn't make sense to be played live, you know what I mean? So I do think that if you don't, that you should be able to make a living without just playing shows. And I think that if you all of a sudden can't play shows, I don't think you should starve for the rest of your life just because you can't play shows. I do think the music should be free, though. I do think music should be, like, pretty much, like, not necessarily free, but like a Spotify kind of thing. A lot of people don't support that business model, but I do. I like having all the music that's, you know, ever been released or whatever on my phone at any moment. I think that's a good thing. I think that is in the age of information, I think that is a good thing, because that involves the arts as well. I don't know if that made sense, but, like, as far as having, like, free information or whatever, I think that includes the arts. But yeah, no, I think that we as a society should come up with a new business model to how to pay for things that are important,
but then
don't
you're
necessarily
deciding,
make money.
but you're sort of deciding. And I think that this is going to tie it up to the next episode, because it's going to get deeper. But you're sort of deciding, like, music or art gets paid for when enough people like it and sort of vote for it. So what you're saying is that even music that doesn't get the attention of people, we should still sort of pay the living of that person because they're doing art, and somebody should pay for it. Like,
no, you're still gonna have a system where the more popular you are, the more money you're gonna make. Like, you're not just gonna be taken care of just because you're an artist. You're not gonna make the same thing that Justin Bieber makes, right? But, like, we're talking about, like, Spotify and how you get, like, half a cent per play, whatever. But we just as a society have to come together, and I think we all agree that the arts are important, so we just need to invest more into that. So I don't know. So you can work with, like, you just track how many times your song has been played, and then just pay the person.
But who pays, the listeners or the government?
Well, it's gonna be a combination of both. Yeah. Well, the point here is to get the government involved in something like that.
Okay. Well, we're gonna get into some a little more serious topics. Not that music isn't, but for us this is fun. But we're gonna get into more technical talks in the next episode. But I think that we're gonna wrap it up here, because I think we gave a good explanation on the music business, especially from the perspective of Santi, that is a successful touring musician and composer. And yeah, on the next episode, if you want to continue to listen to Santi and some of our ideas on things that the government can do to actually get involved in promoting the arts, then go ahead, listen. And if you didn't like Santi that much, then just go to the next episode after this one, and you won't see his face anymore. I'm just kidding. But for the meantime, thanks, Santi, for giving us all of that information, bro. That was actually, I was not even aware of any of that, and I'm a musician myself. So thanks for that. I don't know, Steven, if you have some last words regarding what we spoke.
No, I really appreciate these types of topics for me are a little bit more close to home than some of the other topics that we talk about, even though it doesn't directly affect me, like economy and money and things like that. This is actually closer to my heart, and I really appreciate Santi shining a light on that aspect from the artist's point of view, right? So
yeah, awesome. Can I say one last thing?
Of course.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I don't know if I mentioned it during or when we were talking before the podcast or whatever, but I really appreciate what you guys are doing with this podcast thing, because I think it's the best way that people learn things, like in the world of fast news or fast information, like Facebook and Instagram, whatever. Even like real news sometimes are very, very quick. So having an hour conversation about something is where people really learn things and grow, especially when you disagree. So So this is really cool. Thank you guys for inviting me to this.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Peace.